I think it is highly significant because it deals with a CEO that apparently went outside bounds of propriety and may have acted more to influence stock price than to inform investors, and that is not permissible under the securities laws.
But how are they going to be able to prove that? In other words, he had come out afterwards on Twitter and said he'd been having discussions with the Saudis, and maybe there was more there. Is that what this is going to come down to, whether there was actually a deal on the table that he had been discussing with his investors?
No, I think what it comes down to is that he said financing for this proposed transaction had been, quote, secured, close quote. Secured in that context meant that there was a legal right basically to call upon the financing should the transaction go forward. He subsequently made it clear that he had no such agreement, but he had merely had conversations. In the interim, the stock price gyrated like a roller coaster and created severe problems for unsuspecting investors.
Phil LeBeau is able to join us back with his perspectives. Phil, your latest thoughts?
I want to talk about something that Stephanie Link brought up, this possibility that what happens to Tesla stock, let's say Elon Musk takes a leave of absence while this is being investigated, or ultimately that Tesla decides he's not the CEO of this company. And Stephanie suggested that she thinks the stock rallies. I disagree 100%. He is the DNA of Tesla. He's the secret sauce that makes it go. You rarely hear people talk about a strong bench at Tesla. Certainly within the auto industry, but also within the tech industry. A lot of talented people there, but is there somebody with the same vision that Elon Musk has if he is no longer running this company? And I know we're a long ways from that. There's no response yet from Tesla regarding these charges. We have reached out to Tesla, and there's no indication that Elon Musk plans to step aside. So I understand that is a hypothetical at this point, but it was just something that Stephanie said, and it just jumped out at me, and immediately I thought, no, he's the secret sauce. He's the DNA of Tesla. It's
a great debate because Stephanie, secret sauce at Tesla, but also a potential liability for the company.
And that's what makes a market. But if people had confidence in him, then the stock would not be down as much as it is when all of this started to happen.
We've got some more news. David Faber has that for us. David.
Well, you know, in the midst, of course, of typically in these things, as you well know, Wilf, things can get a bit confusing. It was my understanding, based on conversations, that the company was expecting that the SEC would bring an action against both Tesla and Elon Musk. But we must say that at this point, the complaint is only against Elon Musk, and that is a very important point to make here, because earlier I was talking about fraud claims and the impact that they can have on various contracts and or debt financings and things of that nature. If, in fact, Tesla has been spared a charge of fraud from the SEC, that's certainly an important and positive development, potentially you could view it as, for the company. Again, sources close to the company indicate their expectation was that, in fact, the action would be brought against both Tesla and Elon Musk. But important, once we got the complaint in front of us, it does appear right now Mr. Musk is the only defendant in this action from the SEC. So we'll certainly wanted to clarify that.
Is Harvey Pitt with us?
Yes,
yes,
I'm
Harvey.
still here.
So what is the significance of that, the fact that he is named and the company is not?
I think that the significance is relatively minimal and limited for this reason. The main actor in all of this was Mr. Musk. If the SEC were going to allege charges against Tesla, it would make perfect sense to first bring a lawsuit against Mr. Musk, establish how he acted and that his actions were a violation of the securities laws, and then seek to proceed, if it feels it has enough evidence, against the company for its failure to exercise reasonable controls over its own CEO.
So if you were advising investors in Tesla, and by the way, Harvey, the stock is down 7% here after hours, what are they in for? What happens next if the company decides to fight it? Time frame, worst possible outcome? Tell us what you know.
Well, I think the time frame is not going to be immediate. I think a lot in terms of investors will, and what advice they should heed, is basically to watch very carefully. If he remains in charge of the company, I think it will minimize, at least in the short term, some of the detrimental impact of all of this action. But as the case comes out, as the SEC presents its evidence, which I think is a process that can take up to 6 months here. There may be motions to dismiss and the like, but the case will now go to discovery. As the SEC releases its evidence, investors will have to gauge two things. One is whether Musk is going to be sufficiently diverted from his attention to the company's fortunes that he really is less effective than he has been. And second, even assuming that he isn't diverted, how strong is the case against him, and how likely is it that the company will start to experience consequences that often befall companies whose principal officers or shareholders wind up in the soup?
Harvey, what are the range of possible punishments that Elon Musk could face?
Well, he can face a number of punishments. He can, and this is hypothetical, but
yeah, I'm still good. No, they just want me to hang up the phone, or I think they.
Harvey, go on, continue.
Yeah, he can be enjoined from future violations. He can have fines imposed against him. He can effectively be barred for a period of time or permanently from serving as a principal officer or director of a public company. That last element would, of course, strike a very severe blow to Tesla for all the reasons that all of you have discussed previously. So those are the range of penalties. In addition, it shouldn't be forgotten that there's a criminal investigation proceeding. If, in fact, criminal charges are brought, and they are brought against Mr. Musk, he could face jail time as well as additional fines.